It's been a busy week in the Inland Northwest, so let's get you caught up with the KREM 2 News Week in Review. I'm Cody Proctor. Thanks for being here with us. Over the next half hour, we'll take a look back at some of the news you might have missed from the past week. So let's get started with one of the biggest stories from the Inland Northwest.
Law enforcement's kind of the thing in our family.
A family of first responders across the Inland Northwest.
We're always out looking to help other people.
Are now the ones in need of help after a standoff in Suncrest left Stevens County Deputy Travis Feldner in the hospital.
Love my sister-in-law to death, but we don't really communicate a lot. It's always through Travis. We're both so busy. And I was sitting at my desk and I seen my phone ring and her name came up. And to me, that only means one thing. I answered the phone. I said, "Hello, is he alive?"
Feldner was shot 2 times in the upper chest and shoulder, responding to a break-in.
And Trav said he honestly, when he was shot and he knew he was bleeding, he didn't know if he was going to ever see any of us again.
Feldner's sister Trish Robinson tells me during a break while on duty that sacrificing your life for your community is a harsh reality her family knows all too well.
I'm glad that my mom has already passed on, because I would never want her to go through this twice.
Feldner's older brother, Ronald, was killed while on duty after being shot twice by a 14-year-old boy.
He killed him instantly. He did pierce the bottom of his heart.
Now, over 3 decades later, Feldner's family is revisiting that trauma, but say that they're relieved that it's not the same outcome.
The little PTSD kicked in because you just don't know what mode you're going to be in. Are we going to be planning a funeral, or are we going to be planning his life from here forward to help him out?
After the shooting, Feldner was rushed into surgery where doctors stopped a bleeding artery and left both bullets inside of him to avoid causing any more damage.
I am so proud of what he did. He was able to protect his partners that were with him.
I had the chance to speak with Feldner over the phone, and he says that he's very grateful for the community support during this time, even though it's not clear what the road to recovery looks like for him.
It just shows you that people are still people and they still care.
A quick conversation in between calls for a first responder's family to say thank you for making sure that this protector is protected.
It kind of relieves the pressure, I guess, a little bit, just knowing that he's got all this love and support.
In Spokane, Christian Garza, KREM 2 News. Instead of cherishing his last few weeks of life, Richard Smith's family found themselves in the middle of an identity theft scheme at the Hospice of Spokane Hospice House. In a place where families are meant to find closure.
It's just disgusting.
Inside Hospice of Spokane, Janie Smith and her family found doubt while trying to say goodbye to loving ex-husband and father, Richard Smith.
He goes by Al. He always went by Al.
In November, Smith was diagnosed with cancer, and by March, he was receiving hospice care.
And it was upsetting because you were more worried about, is he safe, rather than how can we be close to him right now.
Described as an independent man,
he always wanted his wallet next to him.
Smith always made sure his ducks were in a row.
And he had one of those wallets that fold open with the money clip in the middle, and it was open like this because it had $189 cash in it.
But just days into his stay at Hospice of Spokane,
there was just a weird feeling. I can't really explain it, but we thought something was odd.
Questions started circulating.
I saw his wallet laying on the table next to the bed, and it was flat.
The missing cash was just the tip of the iceberg.
And I get into his account and I see charge after charge after charge after charge.
Charges made with Smith's debit card all the way across town for hundreds of dollars worth of lottery tickets.
I found out the card was not in his wallet anymore. Neither was his Social Security card, which he always had with him.
In March, Spokane Police Department received 3 separate reports, including the Smith families, all of them dealing with the same issue. A month later, Lena Anderson and her daughter Brianne Bonham were arrested for allegedly stealing a combined total of over $1,000 from Hospice of Spokane residents, where Anderson was a caregiver.
What was really sickening about that was that he knew what was going on. It was obvious he knew what was happening and he couldn't stop her. And that was heart-wrenching.
Both women are facing charges of identity theft, and money laundering. Bonham is expected to be back in court next week, while Anderson's court date is set for July.
It's just really, really sad when people are in that vulnerable state and someone takes advantage of them like that.
In Spokane, Christian Garza, KREM 2 News.
Trent Avenue is closed between Napa and Crestline as crews continue to repair the road after a water main break this morning. I talked to an employee of a local business who was here when it all happened. Thursday started out like any other morning at work for Trevor Brees.
And I came out this morning to open up next door and get everything ready to go. And all of a sudden I looked across our alleyway here and I was like, what is going on?
Security camera video from Brees's work, Spokane hardware supply, caught the exact moment the water started to spout.
And all of a sudden it just came right out of the ground like a geyser, made very little or no sound at all. And I was like, where's the water running? And I looked across the street now because I thought like, okay, maybe a fire hydrant got hit or something like that.
Brees says it only took about 30 minutes for it to flood the whole street.
It just started opening up even more and the crack just got bigger and bigger and the water just came gushing out everywhere.
The city closed off several blocks while they cleaned up the water and worked to fix the pipe and patch up the hole. Even though several feet of water pooled under the overpass at Napa and Trent, there wasn't any damage to Spokane hardware or other local businesses. As the city made repairs, Brees is enjoying the opportunity to see how the process works.
I'm digging that deep of a hole and getting down in there, and just the pipe massive. I mean, the pipe is just massive for how much water runs through there.
The city of Spokane says they believe that the water main break was caused by the failure of a cast iron pipe that was installed in 1947. In Spokane, Caitlin Galloway, KREM 2 News.
As we go to break, here's a check of your weekend forecast. Welcome back to the KREM 2 News Week in Review. Each weekend, we walk you through headlines from the past week in the Inland Northwest.
Anytime someone's charged with a crime, attorney Toby Marshall says the work public defenders do to take on that case can take time.
That lawyer is not supposed to just be a warm body. They're supposed to be someone that really provides effective assistance of counsel.
That's why in January, the Washington State Supreme Court rolled out dramatic new limits on how many cases public defenders can take on. The order says felony attorneys will see a 70% reduction and a 60% caseload reduction for misdemeanor attorneys. Counties don't have to meet the new limits all at once. They can phase them in by chipping away at their caseloads a little each year, with full compliance expected within 10 years. But a lawsuit filed out of Ponderay County by Victoria Bloomhorst and Colin Charbonneau, two public defenders and leaders of public defense in Spokane County, argues the county is overworking them and many others.
The standards that Spokane County has set would not provide sufficient time to give quality representation to every client.
Marshall says one example is how long a public defender can work on a case for a client facing life without parole. Right now, the Washington State Bar Association allocates 120 hours for that type of case, with plans to increase that number over time. For those cases in Spokane and surrounding areas,
the county wants to only give 44 hours to that case. So less than a third of the time that the state Supreme Court has said is appropriate, that the State Bar Association has said is appropriate, the county's trying to cut that time down.
The chair of the Spokane County Commissioners, Mary Brooks, released a statement in response to the lawsuit, saying in part, "What is in dispute is who has the legal authority to set caseload standards and whether two county employees can override a legislative decision by suing their employer in a foreign county. We will not be deterred from governing responsibly by a lawsuit that mischaracterizes the law and the duties of county employees." For now, Marshall hopes the solution can be made in the near future, hoping to ease the stress for both public defenders and their clients.
If that time can't be provided, that person is not getting the constitutional right that's guaranteed to them. They're giving up their families to try and ensure that the people they represent are getting all of the attention that they need.
Connor McAvoy, KREM 2 News. When engines start revving this loud and strong, it makes Spokane neighbor Jessica Stewart face tough decisions when her kids want to ride their bikes away from their home near Division and Augusta.
They're older. They would love to ride their bikes around and their little scooters, but just because of the danger of the streets, it's been really impossible to have my kids be able to have like that childhood of hanging out, riding their bikes.
She says cars or motorcycles meeting up to race is becoming a common sight to see.
And they're blowing past red lights. They're racing their cars down there. They're scaring our animals.
Her experience, according to the Spokane County Sheriff's Office, is shared.
They're about 60, 70 miles an hour now, southbound on Pines.
The Sheriff's Office says deputies responded to a car meet near East Miraboo Parkway and East Pinecroft Way at around 8:30 p.m. on May 1st. Dispatch traffic from that night reveals two motorcyclists riding away from the scene at more than 20 miles above the speed limit once deputies arrived.
They look to be 100 plus now, still westbound.
The Sheriff's Office says the riders hit speeds of up to 130 miles per hour while weaving through traffic on I-90, all while Air One tracked them from above and deputies stayed off the road to avoid a pursuit. As the motorcyclists exited on Division, troopers with Washington State Patrol moved in. Both riders were arrested for reckless driving and their motorcycles were impounded. Then, about 30 minutes later, Air One was called back to the same car meet after reports of more reckless driving. Deputies say a 16-year-old driver was seen doing burnouts in a Volkswagen Passat before he was stopped and cited for reckless driving. That car was also impounded. Both these situations, Sheriff John Knowles says, could have ended much worse.
The likelihood that we're going to have something tragic happen is increasing.
He says these pop-up car meets can quickly turn dangerous, and they'll continue targeted enforcement throughout Spokane County. He adds spectators at these meetups can also be held accountable if a situation becomes dangerous or illegal.
They have to understand that this is becoming such an issue and the dangers are great enough that if they do something where they can and should be held accountable, the Sheriff's Office will be there to hold them accountable for it.
For now, Stewart hopes to see and hear less intense drivers in her neighborhood in the future.
If you want to fight, you go to the ring. If you want to race, you go to the track. This is not a place to race cars. This is Division. This is where people live. This is where people thrive.
Connor McAvoy, KREM 2 News.
Thanks for joining KREM 2 News this weekend. I'm Cody Proctor. Right now, we're taking a look back at some of the news stories from the past week.
Sitting here with Lee Viedman and Rocky Wells, forward for the Spokane Velocity. Let's talk about the 509 weekend first, though, shall we? Here's how it works. You buy one ticket at One Spokane Stadium. You get that second ticket for just $5.09. Certainly a great deal. Both the Zephyr and the Velocity have matches this weekend. Lee, let's start with you. Kind of early on in the season so far. Our third season as an organization here in Spokane. How's the season going so far?
So far, so good. We had a challenging start with scheduling, roster build. It took a while to come together, but where we stand in the league today, we're sitting near the top. Most teams around us have got a game on us right now, so we're in a good place, and a huge game coming up this weekend versus Naples, who would actually equal on points with us right now.
Okay. If folks don't know, the first two seasons, you guys have gone all the way to the championship game. That's a first for USL League One history, correct?
Correct.
So a lot of high expectations going into the year. How do you manage those expectations as a squad?
Yeah, I think the expectation we bring upon ourselves, because we've achieved that the past 2 years, we want to go a step further now, and we want to bring a championship back to Spokane for the community. So we put that pressure upon ourselves to do that, but it comes as part of the job, so we expect that.
Cool. Rocky, let's talk to you right now. If you guys don't know this, Rocky Wells is still in high school. He's a senior at Meade High School, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're the first ever, I guess you called academy player, is that how you phrase it?
Yeah.
For the Spokane Velocity. And for folks who don't follow soccer that closely, what does that mean?
Yeah, so the academy contract with Spokane Velocity allows me to keep all my NCAA eligibility to play college soccer still, and allows me to get some runs with the pro guys as well. So
that's amazing. You're a forward for the squad, correct?
Yes, yeah.
What's the biggest difference that you've seen so far competing against high school players versus professional players?
I mean, obviously the level's a little bit different, speed of play, and just getting out there with like older guys. I think I would just say pretty much speed of play, and then obviously you're playing with men pretty much. So yeah.
What a great opportunity.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And Lee, talking about this weekend, 509 weekend, how important is it to have the community support to come out and get behind your squad?
It's incredible. If you look at the past 2 years, they've come up huge for us in many different occasions, but more recently in the 2 playoff games that we had at home last season, and you saw the energy and the vibe in the stadium that helped push the team to win that semi-final and go on to the final. So the connection between us and the fans and the community is absolutely imperative. Without them, we're nothing.
Yeah, and if folks haven't been out to see a match at One Spokane Stadium this year, does the squad look largely the same, or do you have a lot of new faces this year?
I'd say about 60% of the roster is the same, and we've got plenty of new faces as well that have helped us take the roster another level. So some new faces to get to know, but plenty of old faces as well.
All right. Lee, Rocky, thank you very much. Get out there for 509 weekend, buy 1 ticket, get that second ticket for just $5.09. Back to you guys.
Welcome back to the KREM 2 News, a week in review. I hope you're having a great weekend. Let's get back to one more story you might have missed this past week.
In this wildflower field in Aurora, workers are buzzing with excitement. So cute. And so are the bees. Mason bees, to be exact, pollinating 95% of everything they land on.
And they belly flop onto the flowers, and they get completely covered in loose pollen.
So protecting them from the invasive Houdini fly,
these really have the potential to hurt our mason bee populations,
is a critical mission for Abigail Leonard. She's here from UC Davis studying how mason bees and the parasite interact. Native to Europe, the Houdini fly showed up in Seattle 8 years ago and has quickly spread along the West Coast and beyond.
You know, they look like a tiny little fruit fly flying around your bee hotel.
Leonard says mason bees nest in hollowed reeds or stems where they collect pollen for their young.
Now the Houdini fly, it's a very aggressive parasite. It sits and waits at the nest entrance for that mason bee female to go out and collect pollen and nectar, and then it sneaks in and lays its eggs on the pollen that the bee left for her larvae.
Right now, Leonard says Houdini flies are impacting 1 out of every 3 mason bees. But how many flies are doing that damage? She hopes to find the answers in these cages. Each one is equipped with a special bee hotel, bees, and a varying number of Houdini flies.
If we get the same amount of parasitism in a cage with 2 flies as a cage with 16 flies, we know that just 2 flies are capable of doing a lot of damage.
The OSU Extension Office planted this Phacelia last fall. It's native to the West Coast, and mason bees love it. Planting some in your yard is just one thing you can do to help support the mason bee population.
As the Houdini fly are spreading so quickly, and they're just devastating to our sweet little bees.
Tira McKelvey is with Rent Mason Bees, which supplied these bee hotels for the study. They're different than those you might find in a hardware store made from bamboo and drilled wood, which McKelvey cautions against using.
And you have to be able to open everything up and clean in the fall. And so when you see these cute little bee hotels, please don't get them. They're going to be harmful. They'll be predator habitats if you're not managing and taking care of them.
Taking care of the pollinators that are taking care of us. In Aurora, Catherine Cook.
Keep it here for more news and weather updates throughout the weekend. And don't forget, you can watch our latest newscasts anytime on your schedule on KREM 2 Plus. Download and watch right now for free. I'm Cody Proctor. Thank you for watching KREM 2 News Week in Review.